Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock, and we're going to get you caught up on all of today's mixed martial arts news with John Ramdeen and Robin Black joining me to chat about what it all means for the industry. Today, Andrei Arlovski comments on a training partner, Bellator cuts a veteran fighter, and a big signing by the UFC. It was a turbulent day for Eddie Alvarez on Tuesday as Bellator gave their lightweight champion an unconditional release from his contract, believed to have one fight remaining on it, and allowed him to sign with the UFC later that day. The result is Alvarez will debut for the organization on September the 27th at UFC 178 against Donald Cerrone, which was the original planned fight for Cerrone on that card, who was then matched with Bobby Green. Alvarez comes in with a record of 25-3 and had been fighting with Bellator since their very first card in April of 2009. Baroni posted a message on Tuesday that he has been cut by the Bellator organization and stated it was, quote, because of war, likely in reference to John Copenhaver, who Baroni had defended online as the two were friends. Baroni is coming off a first-round TKO loss to Carl Parisian and has lost 5 of his last 6 fights, and the Parisian fight was his lone bout with Bellator. And Andrei Arlovski has spoken publicly to the Russian outlet Sports.ru in discussing a training incident with Alistair Overeem at the Jackson Winklejohn camp. Arlovski stated he was recently sparring with Overeem, who hit him with a hard knee in the stomach and forced Arlovski to go to the hospital and check that his ribs were not broken, and thus would have put his fight with Antonio Silva in question. Arlovski went on to say that Overeem injures everyone he trains with and comes after it was rumored that he was the one who injured John Jones in training and led to the fight with Daniel Cormier being postponed. And I'm here with John Ramdeen and Robin Black. The biggest story going on in mixed martial arts is a new nickname for Hector Lombard, Showweather. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I would love to know the genesis of this nickname. Was it given to him by his teammates or his coaches, or is it something? I don't even know why we're talking about this. Shouldn't we be talking about Eddie Alvarez going to the UFC, now going to be taking on Donald Cerrone in a fight that will probably deliver one of the top 5 greatest fights of the year?
This was a tumultuous day for Eddie Alvarez. He gets his unconditional release. And let's start there. Yep. Was this a smart move on the part of Bellator? They are rumored to have one more fight left on his deal at this point, but it seemed pretty certain that win or lose, Eddie Alvarez was leaving. So maybe best to cut bait.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past, about Scott Coker's relationship with fighters and managers and trainers, and it's a good one. So I think this is something that he probably sat down with Eddie Alvarez and their team and said, look, we don't want to have a bad relationship. We want to be able to offer you something. If you go to the UFC and it doesn't work out, we'll be the home of Eddie Alvarez. But we're not going to allow you to be pissed off. Go do your thing. We wish you all the best. It makes the most sense because you want to have a good relationship with fighters moving forward, and that's the way to do that.
First off, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this fight's so cool. Like, it's so cool. But second of all, I agree. Sometimes you want to win the fight that's in front of you. And that's what Bjorn Rebney was. Like, oh yeah, it's about this? Well, we're winning it. We're getting you. Other times you want to lose a fight or you won't take the battle to improve the long term. And I think Coker's thinking is, my reputation is I'm a great guy to deal with. I'm fair. We know that people are scared to sign with Bellator because of contracts. With me, you're going to get a new Bellator and you're going to get new relationships.
And I think when you also look at the fact of what Eddie Alvarez had lost out on here, I mean, he was pegged to be on that same card with George St. Pierre and Nick Diaz. And when you figure in the pay-per-view points that he would have gotten in there, that was $1 million plus payday, like life-changing money that was stopped from him getting there. Now he gets the Donald Cerrone fight. It certainly builds up UFC 178, which, yes, it's missing that marquee of Jones and Cormier.
I don't care.
But a can't-miss card for fight fans here. And for Eddie Alvarez, I feel here for Bobby Green, this guy who was taken out of the Masvidal fight to be put in against Cerrone, and now again is odd man out. He either is going to get a new opponent on 4 weeks' notice, or he's just out of a fight at this point. But unfortunately, this is the way the deck stacks, and Cerrone and Alvarez was the fight clearly the UFC wanted.
Yeah, and then you're trying to get as many eyeballs as humanly possible to tune into your product. Yes, Bobby Green's a very, very talented guy, but we're talking about action, and you want, at the end of the night, when fans turn off the TV or they leave or whatever, the bar that they're watching the fight in, they say, holy smokes, I'd never seen this Eddie Alvarez guy before. Win or lose, he comes to fight, he comes to put on a show, and when you have a dance partner as good as Donald Cerrone, I mean, it's fireworks.
Yeah,
They're really written all over this.
The only guy on earth right now that you can be sure is just as exciting as Cowboy Cerrone is Eddie Alvarez. It's a crazy fight. Like, I peed a little bit when I heard that. It's so good. Like, I'm just going to watch all their old fights and we're going to try to break down what's going to happen. But who the hell knows? Because both guys are big risk takers, you know? And risk-taking behavior doesn't always win you things. But for Donald Cerrone, 4 knockouts in a row, 4 bonuses in a row. So it is winning him things.
Yeah.
So it's taught him to continue to take risks. Alvarez knows no other way. Alvarez also, I don't know if people know this, he has a reputation as being the best guy in the business. He goes into a gym to train. He says hello to every single person, no matter who they are. My friend Evan, when he was at working at the Black Zillions, he had one conversation with Eddie Alvarez. Eddie Alvarez recommended a book to him, and they left, and it showed up at his house delivered to him from Eddie Alvarez. That's the kind of guy this guy is. The UFC did a great thing in getting him, and I think Bellator, yes, it's a massive loss, but I think in the long run, it helps their reputation.
And I think that you were really circumventing a bigger issue. If Eddie Alvarez, whether you put him against Michael Chandler or your interim champion in Will Brooks, I mean, the risk of him winning that fight and then leaving, I think this is kind of mitigating your losses here. The guy doesn't want to be here. Let's move on. And yeah, short term, it might sting a bit, but long term, I mean, there is a complete 180 right now to the vibe that Bellator is espousing from Scott Coker right now. And that kind of does lead into, you know, this guy has made some pretty strong decisions immediately when the War Machine story came out, gone. Phil Baroni now cut as well. Baroni believes it's because he was defending War Machine, but let's be honest, you were at that fight, John. I mean, Phil Baroni's 38 now. He is somebody that, I mean, you saw him against Carl Parisian here. I can't say I'm really surprised he would be cut regardless of whatever he was defending online.
Yeah, no, I understand, but the thing about Phil Baroni is, yes, you can say that he's past his prime, but he's still, you know, it carries some weight. I think there's the old school fans that if Phil Baroni's on the card, you talk about that Bellator card, that's one of the reasons why people were tuning in, because Carl Parisian
had the most interest.
Exactly, had the most interest. So I think Phil Baroni still has a place. I wouldn't be surprised. He goes to ONE FC, gets 2 or 3 wins, he'll find himself back in Bellator.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always for a fighter doing what he believes is right. Mark Bocek was in here, and he retired smartly, protected himself. It's so admirable. But if Phil Baroni wants to fight, Phil Baroni has the right.
All right, for Robin Black, John Ramdeen, I'm John Pollock, and stay tuned for more Fight News Now Extra.